What if I told you that the most dangerous play in football right now isn't happening on the field? No touchdowns, no interceptions, just one billionaire owner quietly moving pieces behind the scenes, trying to rewrite the future of the NFL without anyone noticing. According to whispers from league insiders, Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones has become fixated on a rookie quarterback who doesn't even wear the star on his helmet. And the craziest part? This isn't some recycled trade rumor. There were no press leaks, no careless tweets, no unnamed sources slipping information to the media. Instead, there are reports of midnight meetings, back-channel conversations, and a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to steal away the league's most electric young quarterback from the Cleveland Browns. It sounds impossible, right? A move so bold and so risky that it borders on madness. But for Jerry Jones, this isn't just about adding talent. This is about cementing a legacy, taking one final gamble and chasing a dynasty that could define how he's remembered forever. And as wild as it sounds, insiders say it might actually happen. So what's really going on behind closed doors? Why is one of the most powerful owners in sports willing to risk everything, his reputation, his draft picks, even his franchise stability, for a rookie who hasn't even played a full season? The story begins with a single game, a breakout performance that didn't just impress Jerry Jones, it consumed him. It all started on a night when the Cleveland Browns weren't supposed to shine. The roster was banged up, the locker room was filled with drama, and coaching decisions were being second-guessed before kickoff. But none of that mattered once the rookie quarterback, Sanders, stepped onto the field. Under the bright lights of primetime football, Sanders delivered the kind of performance that makes careers and rewrites narratives in a single evening. His arm looked electric, firing bullets into tight windows. His pocket awareness was almost unnatural for a rookie, sliding away from pressure, reading defenses like a veteran, and buying just enough time to make the impossible look routine. And through it all, he carried himself with a poise that felt larger than the moment. Fans watching at home could feel it. This wasn't just another game. It was the birth of a star. And somewhere in Dallas, Jerry Jones was watching every second. At first, it was admiration, but then something changed. Insiders say Jones wasn't just impressed, he was visibly emotional. It wasn't the Browns' win or loss that moved him, it was what Sanders represented. That rare mix of natural swagger and raw playmaking ability the Cowboys hadn't truly seen since the golden era. The spark reminded Jerry of something he'd been chasing for decades, and something he feared he might never see again. Later that night, long after the broadcast ended, Jones reportedly demanded access to the game film. He sat alone, replaying Sanders' highlights again and again, well past midnight. A man who'd seen hundreds of stars rise and fall in his lifetime, locked in on a kid who wasn't even on his team. For Jerry Jones, this wasn't about scouting anymore. It was about longing. About rediscovering that flash of magic that could change everything. And that's when the obsession began to take root. But for Jerry, simply watching wasn't enough. What happened next turned admiration into action and set off a chain of midnight meetings that no one saw coming.
Not long after Sanders' breakout game, Jerry Jones made a move that shocked even the people closest to him. Without warning, the Cowboys' executive suite was cleared out. Lights dimmed, doors locked, and only a handful of trusted advisors were allowed to stay. It wasn't on the schedule, no emails sent, no calendar invites. This was an unscripted, late-night meeting called on pure impulse. And in that room, Jones gave one order, one demand that silenced everyone else at the table. Get me in contact with his camp, whatever it takes. From that moment forward, admiration turned into obsession, and obsession turned into action. This wasn't a casual conversation about what if. It was a directive, a mission, and Jerry expected results. Insiders say the atmosphere that night was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The owner, who usually played the role of charismatic businessman, looked different, almost restless. He wasn't talking about sponsorships or TV ratings. He was pacing, focused, consumed. For a man who spent decades in power, Jerry Jones had found something that made him feel urgent again. And when the meeting ended, a plan was already in motion. Quiet calls would be made, messages sent through back channels. The entire pursuit had to be invisible, because one wrong leak could destroy it before it even began. But here's the thing, Jerry wasn't just curious. He wasn't asking if the Cowboys could land Sanders. He was asking how soon. And that shift from possibility to inevitability is what turned this midnight meeting into the first step of a high-stakes chess game the NFL had no idea was happening. But if Jerry was going to pull this off, he knew he couldn't use the normal playbook. The league has rules, and when it comes to quarterbacks, the rules are ironclad. Teams can't just whisper to another player's representatives without permission. It's called tampering, and it comes with million-dollar fines, lost draft picks, and the kind of PR firestorm that can sink an owner's reputation overnight. But Jerry Jones? He's never been the type to play by the book. Instead of running this through official channels, insiders say Jerry activated something else entirely: his inner circle. These weren't GMs or scouting directors. These were the fixers. Trusted allies Jones had leaned on for decades, men who knew how to move quietly in the gray areas where paperwork didn't exist and conversations left no fingerprints. Within days of Sanders' primetime explosion, whispers suggest that communication with his camp was already underway. Not through press conferences, not through agents, but through intermediaries, mutual contacts who could pass messages without ever leaving a trail. Quiet dinners in tucked-away restaurants, private numbers exchanged through friends of friends, nothing that could be traced back to Dallas. And that was the genius of it. While rival GMs debated potential trades out in the open, Jerry's plan was happening in the shadows. He built layers of plausible deniability around himself. If the league came knocking, he could shrug and say there was no proof, no paper trail, no official conversation. But make no mistake, this wasn't random curiosity. This was a calculated move to bend the system without breaking it, to lure a superstar without ever touching the tripwire marked tampering.
And while the Cowboys organization publicly denied every whisper, those inside the building knew the truth. Jerry Jones was playing a dangerous game of shadows. But while Jerry's secret network moved behind the curtain, one man, the face of the franchise, had no idea any of this was happening. While Jerry Jones was quietly plotting his boldest gamble yet, one man remained completely in the dark: Dak Prescott. The quarterback who had been the face of the Dallas Cowboys for nearly a decade, the leader, the captain, the steady voice in the huddle, had no clue what was unfolding behind his back. Publicly, the Cowboys were all in on Dak. Coaches praised his leadership at press conferences. Teammates vouched for his chemistry, and ownership backed him with polished sound bites that made it seem like nothing had changed. On the surface, Dak was still the cornerstone. But behind closed doors, the truth was very different. Sources said Cowboys leadership made a conscious decision: keep Dak completely out of the loop. The fewer people who knew about Jerry's pursuit of Sanders, the harder it would be for the story to leak. And maybe, just maybe, it would soften the blow if things never materialized. To Jerry, it wasn't about respect. It was about control. Inside the coaching staff, opinions were split. The offensive coordinator reportedly loved the idea of working with a young, dual-threat quarterback like Sanders, a chance to rebuild the system around speed, mobility, and unpredictability. To him, it was like coaching with a blank canvas. But the head coach? He was worried. He knew that going behind your franchise QB's back was more than just risky. It could blow up the entire locker room. It sends a brutal message. No one is safe, not even the face of the franchise. And Dak himself? While the secret tunnels were being dug toward Sanders' camp, he was focused on something else entirely. Rehab, film study, off-season workouts, doing everything in his power to hold the team together. He believed he was still the leader of America's team. He believed the Cowboys were riding with him. But the reality? Jerry Jones had already moved on in his mind. For him, Dak wasn't the answer anymore. He was the placeholder. And that's when the pursuit of Sanders shifted from football logic to something much bigger. Because for Jerry, this wasn't just about replacing Dak. It was about building an empire. To most owners, a player like Sanders would be evaluated with spreadsheets and scouting reports, arm strength, footwork, decision-making, leadership traits. But Jerry Jones wasn't looking at Sanders like a quarterback. He was looking at him like a brand. From the moment Sanders lit up that primetime stage, Jerry saw dollar signs, and not just small numbers. According to insiders, Cowboys executives began running projections almost immediately, and the numbers were staggering. Merchandise sales skyrocketing before a deal was even close. Sponsorship demands spiking at the mere thought of Sanders in a Cowboys jersey. Internal analysts claimed that pairing Sanders with the star on the helmet could generate 9 figures in revenue over the course of his rookie contract alone. And Jerry wasn't just chasing profit, he was chasing immortality. He saw Sanders as the kind of cultural magnet who could take the Cowboys beyond football, a marketing weapon, a modern-day superstar who could sell jerseys across 6 continents and turn the franchise into a 24/7 global spectacle. Behind closed doors, Cowboys marketing teams reportedly began drafting rollout plans as if the trade had already happened. YouTube series, behind-the-scenes documentaries, global social campaigns, all centered around Sanders' charisma. It was no longer about touchdowns or passing yards. It was about content, about global reach, about empire building. And this was the shift. To Jerry Jones, Sanders wasn't just another quarterback prospect. He was the reset button, the player who could transform the Cowboys from a successful franchise into something bigger, a dynasty that dominated both the field and the business world. But while Jerry was sketching out blueprints for his next empire, the Cleveland Browns were fighting a very different battle, one happening inside their own walls, and it threatened to blow everything apart. While Jerry Jones was quietly sketching the blueprint for his next empire, the Cleveland Browns were living in chaos, not on the field, but inside their own walls. Sanders wasn't just a rookie quarterback anymore. He had become a symbol, a marketing machine, a walking headline, and instead of uniting the organization, that spotlight was tearing it apart. Reports say the coaching staff was split down the middle. Some believed Sanders could be the future, the kind of talent you build a franchise around, but others were sounding alarms. They worried the organization was prioritizing jersey sales and TikTok clips over Sanders' actual football development. One insider described it bluntly: half the building wants to win with him, the other half just wants to cash in on him. The head coach found himself caught in the middle, trying to groom a young quarterback while ownership drooled over endorsement deals and social metrics. And then came the micromanagement. Sources claimed Browns owner Jimmy Haslam had started inserting himself into decisions that should have been left to football operations. Player evaluations, media strategy, even internal messaging. It wasn't just unusual, it was suffocating. The result? Fractures everywhere. Coaches frustrated, front office executives second-guessing each other, and as the pressure mounted, whispers began to circulate. Maybe trading Sanders wouldn't just bring back value. Maybe it would bring back peace. That's the wild part. Some inside the Browns reportedly started to believe that moving Sanders, the very player who had given them hope, could be the only way to relieve the internal tension threatening to pull the team apart. And that possibility gave Jerry Jones exactly the opening he needed. But Jerry wasn't working alone. Just as Cleveland's building was starting to crack, an old name re-entered the picture. Someone who had the power to change everything with a single phone call. Just when things couldn't get any more complicated, a familiar name stepped quietly into the conversation. Not a GM, not a scout, not even a current player, but a legend. Deion Sanders. For Jerry Jones, Deion isn't just another Hall of Famer. He's family. A cornerstone of the Cowboys' golden era, a player who helped define the dynasty years, and a man whose relationship with Jerry stretches back decades. Their bond was never just business, it was personal, built on loyalty, respect, and a shared history that most of today's NFL executives couldn't begin to understand. And now, Deion had a new role in this story: the father. The father of the NFL's most electric rookie quarterback. According to insiders, while the media speculated and executives postured, Jerry and Deion were having private conversations. Not official negotiations, not contract talks, just two old friends catching up. But behind those casual conversations, something bigger was happening. Deion was acting as a bridge, smoothing communication, passing along insight, and making sure the potential move felt less like a business transaction and more like family business. And that, insiders believe, may be the single reason Jerry still believes this deal can actually happen. Because with Deion in the mix, this isn't about Jerry Jones trying to poach another team's quarterback. It's about reconnecting with a legend and giving the next generation a chance to wear the same star his father once made shine. Even more intriguing? Sources close to Sanders say the rookie himself is intrigued. The thought of suiting up for the Cowboys, of carrying on his father's legacy under the brightest spotlight in football, isn't lost on him. As Cleveland battled internal chaos, the pull of history, of family, was starting to tug in Dallas's direction. But even with nostalgia, legacy, and friendship working in Jerry's favor, there was still one obstacle he couldn't avoid: the price. And what came next pushed this pursuit into the territory of NFL history. Legacy, loyalty, nostalgia, all of it mattered. But at the end of the day, the NFL runs on cold numbers. And if Jerry Jones wanted Sanders, he would have to pay a price unlike anything the league had ever seen. This wasn't going to be a simple first-round pick swap. League insiders say the numbers being floated behind closed doors were staggering. 2 first-rounders up front, a proven defensive starter, someone who could anchor Cleveland's roster immediately, plus additional performance-based incentives stacked on top, the kind of sweeteners designed to make an offer impossible to ignore. To most GMs, that would be unthinkable. Too much to sacrifice for a rookie quarterback who hadn't even played a full season. But Jerry Jones isn't most GMs. According to those close to him, Jerry reportedly told his advisors one thing: forget traditional valuation. Sanders isn't a regular rookie. He's a franchise reset button. That mindset changed everything. While other executives might have walked away from the table, Jerry leaned in. He saw an opportunity not just to rebuild the Cowboys, but to redefine them. He wasn't counting interceptions or touchdowns. His focus was bigger: global merchandise sales, media rights, sponsorship deals, international expansion. To Jerry, Sanders was more than a quarterback. He was an investment portfolio, a cultural weapon, and a legacy move rolled into one. And the ripple effects were immediate. Inside the NFC East, rival teams began bracing for impact. The Eagles quietly accelerated defensive scouting, hunting for players fast enough to contain a dual threat like Sanders. Giants executives were suddenly exploring quarterback options of their own, not out of need, but out of fear. Washington reportedly ramped up their search for sideline-to-sideline defenders, anticipating what life in the division would look like if Dallas landed the league's next superstar. Even outside the division, rival owners were uneasy. Whispers of tampering grew louder. Concerns about competitive balance and unchecked wealth tilted toward Dallas. But the league office stayed silent, and that silence gave Jerry exactly the breathing room he needed.
Because while everyone else debated what Sanders was worth on paper, Jerry was preparing to make a move that had nothing to do with the numbers in a box score and everything to do with rewriting his legacy. And that's where this story takes its final dramatic turn. Because for Jerry Jones, this wasn't just about football anymore. It was about how he would be remembered when it was all over. For Jerry Jones, this chase was never just about adding another quarterback. It was about something far bigger, something personal. At 81 years old, the Cowboys owner has built a sports empire that rakes in billions, dominates TV ratings, and sells more merchandise than some entire leagues. But deep down, all of that wealth and power still doesn't fill the one void that haunts him: the glory days. Insiders say Jerry has become more reflective in recent years. He's been caught rewatching old championship footage, revisiting press clippings from the dynasty years, even keeping old game programs stacked on his desk. He remembers what it felt like to prove everyone wrong, to silence critics, to lift Lombardi trophies while the entire football world looked on. And now, with time running out, he's desperate to feel that again. To Jerry, Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's the final chapter, the capstone to a story that began when Jerry bought the Cowboys back in 1989 and turned them into the most valuable franchise in the world. This isn't about statistics. This isn't about roster management. It's about writing the ending on his terms. A last gamble, a final masterstroke. And the risks? Jerry doesn't care. Draft picks, veterans, even the stability of the locker room. He's willing to throw it all on the table. Because in his mind, if Sanders brings another Lombardi to Dallas, it won't just be another championship. It will be the moment Jerry Jones cements his legacy forever. But that's the danger. Because if the move works, Jerry goes down as a genius who bet it all and won. If it fails, he could be remembered as the man who mortgaged the Cowboys' future for a dream that never came true. Publicly, both teams deny everything. No trade talks, no secret meetings, just rumors swirling in the background of a long NFL season. But insiders insist there's more happening than anyone wants to admit. Midnight phone calls, whispered conversations, and a Cowboys owner who refuses to let time run out without one last swing for greatness. And that's the beauty and the danger of this entire story. On the surface, it looks like another off-season rumor, the kind of speculation fans laugh off on Twitter. But if you look closer, if you listen to the whispers, you see a pattern. Jerry Jones isn't dabbling in curiosity. He's orchestrating something bold enough to shake not just the Dallas Cowboys, but the entire power structure of the NFL. If he pulls it off, history will remember him as the architect of one of the greatest gambles in sports, the man who rewrote the rules, risked everything, and delivered a second dynasty when no one thought it was possible. But if it fails, if Sanders stays in Cleveland, or the league cracks down, or the price proves too steep, then Jerry risks being remembered as something else entirely. Not the visionary genius, but the stubborn owner who chased ghosts of the past and mortgaged the future of America's team. And that's the razor's edge this story sits on. Genius or madness, dynasty or disaster, immortality or infamy. So now the question is yours. Is Jerry Jones a mastermind pulling off his final chess move, or a desperate man blinded by obsession? Let us know what you think in the comments, because one thing is certain, this story is far from over.